Good evening, members. We're not going to do a procession in tonight because we have the social distancing, so we're just going to get straight on with the meeting. I can confirm that we have got 15 members here tonight, so we are quorate. So good evening and welcome to the meeting of Milton Borough Council. Due to concerns over COVID, a number of changes have been made to enable us to meet safely. One being reverting to the layout we had at the AGM. Tonight's agenda is very full with a lot of important matters to attend to. In the interests of managing the business effectively and to minimise the risk of COVID transmission for all those present, members are respectfully asked to keep speeches as brief as possible. Evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. Please switch mobile phones to silent. Microphones. Councillors and officers are reminded to use their microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. The Reverend Kevin Ashby will now offer prayers.
Can I first of all wish all of you a very merry and peaceful Christmas from all of the churches in Milton and obviously in the wider borough as well. So then let us pray. God, we thank you for the message of peace that Christmas brings to our distracted world. Give peace among the nations, peace in our land, peace in our homes, and peace in our hearts as we remember the birth at Bethlehem of the Prince of Peace. We pray too, O God, for those who hold office on this borough council and in the life of this borough, for all those who in their various ways serve the community, especially in these difficult times, that fulfilling their duties with singleness of purpose, they may wisely and faithfully exercise the authority committed to them and promote the common good. We ask all these things in your name's sake. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Ashby. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from councillors Brown, Carter, Child, Cumbers, Evans, Freer, Glancy, Higgins, Holmes, Stedman and Wood. Can any member wishing to give apologies for another member indicate they wish to do so by raising their hand? No, so there's no other apologies. I can therefore confirm that we have 15 members present and we received the apologies as noted. Minutes. To confirm the minutes of the following council meetings: the extraordinary meeting of council held on the 23rd of September 2021, the meeting of the council held on the 23rd of September 21, and the extraordinary meeting of council held on the 2nd of November 21. Leader to move.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you want me to stand up when I speak? Or
no, we're not going to stand tonight. There's no need.
So remain seated.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
Yes.
Happy to move the minutes on the Green Order, Peter. Item 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I'm happy to second it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So anybody got any queries on the minutes? So they're all moved. Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. If any members would like to indicate that they have an interest to declare, could they please do so by raising their hand? A personal interest in respect of county councillors Orson and Posnet are taken as being on record, and any matters which relate to the Leicestershire County Council. So there's no other declarations of interest. Okay, Mayor's announcements. That's me again then. I'd like to start by congratulating Councillor Tim Webster on winning the Dorian Ward by-election and welcome him to his first full council meeting. COVID is still playing its part on the mayoral diary, with many events being cancelled. However, the Deputy Mayor and I have still attended quite a few events. Some of the events I've attended, including the ribbon cutting events to open the McCarthy Stone retirement homes and the new air ambulance store. The Mayoress and I attended the Milton Lines reception presentation evening held here at Parkside, and we attended the Southgate Stephen Civic Service at Stamford and a charity event at Bourne. It was an honour to once again represent the borough at this year's Remembrance Day service and parade, and we attended the ABF Soldiers Charity Curry Lunch held at the DATR Centre. We spent an enjoyable evening walking around and turning the Christmas lights on, which was made into a short video and put on Facebook. The video has been viewed many thousands of times and went down very well. I had a great day at the Melton and Beaver Agricultural Society show and sale. At the end of the show, the produce that had been in the show was auctioned off with the proceeds going to my charity, Young Lives versus Cancer. And along with the proceeds from the auction at the dinner and in the ring up the following Wednesday, the total raised was in the region of £5,000. The last event before tonight was the Mayor's Carol service held in St Mary's Church. The event was very well supported, and with the Christmas trees and the way in which the Reverend Kevin Ashby conducted the service, it was a magical evening enjoyed by all. The share of the collection for my charity was £151.24. Along with donations from the public towards my son's charity swim, my charity walk, and the donations for people in lieu of sending Christmas cards, the total is building up nicely. Thank you. Leaders' announcements.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to wish yourself and the Mayoress a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And secondly, like you, I want to congratulate Tim Webster for winning a tight by-election. I have to say, in all my years since 2003, I've never known a by-election have such great two candidates, actually both really strong candidates, and they both did great credit to democracy in Milton. So, but obviously there had to be a winner, and I congratulate Tim. He went round the streets smiling away in not the best of weather. So it's always hard to fight a by-election in the end of October and November time, but he did it. And like I say, that smile got him through. Mr. Mayor, I don't have to tell you because you've already said it. We do have a very busy agenda tonight, which is testament to the amount of work the council is currently doing. I will therefore do my best to keep my comments relatively brief this evening. I must start with the increase in risk and concern regarding the, I try and pronounce it properly, Omicron variant. Since our last meeting, we have moved from what was a relatively stable position to one where our public health experts are urging far more greater caution. And where yesterday the UK recorded the highest number of daily infections since the pandemic began. As we know, by triggering Plan B, the government has introduced a number of additional measures regarding face masks and so-called COVID passports. Whatever our views may be on the approach taken, it is right that as a council, we do our best to set the right tone and lead by example in both protecting our colleagues and communities, whilst also safeguarding the future of our economy. I'm grateful for the continuing support of members for the steps we are taking to manage the ongoing situation. I couldn't go much further without my remarks, without commenting on the fantastic news that the HIF grant has now been secured by Leicestershire County Council. When you think back to June, we were 7 days from the grant being handed back and the southern section of the road and potentially our local plan being in significant jeopardy. Following a huge effort by both the community and council, working closely with our MP, we were able to persuade the county council to rethink. And following a significant amount of work over the last few months, MBC demonstrated it could deliver once again, achieving everything asked of us. Having now secured the HIF, I look forward to spades going into the ground next year and a road we have talked about for generations starting in earnest later on in the year. Another significant piece of work, Mr. Mayor, we have worked closely with all the districts and the county council is on the development of a new joint waste strategy. Waste collection is a key universal service which touches every household in our borough, and it is important we provide a service fit for the environmental challenges of the future. The strategy includes bold, ambitious to achieve a cycling rate of 65%. Currently, Mr. Mayor, for interest, we're around 44%. And whilst it's quite properly assesses all potential options, the focus for Leicestershire will be delivering in line with government policy, particularly around things like weekly food waste collections. Crucially, to be affordable, the government will also have to follow through on its commitment to fully fund any changes required. It is also important for me to confirm that despite what has been implied in some media outlets, the strategy does not include any commitment to introduce 3 weekly collections. Rather, this was simply one of the options assessed. We are now ready to commence the public consultation in January, and I look forward to residents positively engaging in the 12-week process. On a more disappointing note, it was sad to hear that the council had been unsuccessful in its levelling up fund bid. But I was heartened to hear that we had received such positive feedback on our submission. It was an incredibly competitive process, with only 105 of the 305 bids submitted being successful. Our bid, which sought funding for 3 town centre projects linked to the Cattle Market, Theatre and King Street development, scored very well, and particularly so on deliverability. We are now working with Rutland and our MP to take on board the feedback, strengthen our bid, and will be ready to submit again in the second round, which we understand is due to be announced in the spring of next year. Finally, as our housing improvement journey continues at pace, and we welcome our new Assistant Director for Housing Management, Alistair Bennett, who joined us recently. I wanted to pay tribute to John Skerritt, who has confirmed his intention to retire from TFEC in January. John has dedicated 58 years of his life to public service, initially as a borough and then a county councillor, and then more recently representing the interests of tenants as chair of TFEC. His legacy and contribution are in no doubt, and John has been a key member of the Housing Improvement Board as we've taken significant steps forward over the last few years. I have been very grateful for his advocacy of tenant issues, support, and challenge John has given me throughout my time as leader, and I wish him and his wife Sheila all the very best for the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. Item 6, public question time. I can confirm that no questions were received by the deadline. Number 7, questions from members. I can confirm that no questions were received by the deadline. Number 8, motions on notice. The leader has advised that the Equalities motion has been withdrawn and will be presented to the next full council meeting. Moving on to item 9, Cabinet recommendations to Council, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2021-22. Councillor DeBell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members will know that the Mid-Year Treasury Management Report is a requirement of Council's reporting procedure, which provides members with an overview of its performance against the prudential indicators and a comprehensive review of other activities and the Treasury management environment during the preceding 6 months. The key message in this report, Mr. Mayor, are shown in the tables at 5.1. Original sheets, because there's been some new sheets issued on this, new page 362 for members. These show that our capital expenditure forecast has been revised and is now expected to be 6.3 million, an increase of 1.4 million compared to the original forecast. And in the table at page 41, that no additional borrowing has been needed or is expected in this financial year. That our capital financing at the 30th of September remained at 31.5 million, unchanged from the figure at the 1st of April, which members will recognise is well within our operating boundary of 36.4 million and authorised limit of 46 million. Members, whilst it continues to be a very challenging time for Treasury management activities, first Brexit and then COVID, which have impacted on investment returns worldwide, and the UK bank rate, which remains unchanged at 0.10%, although that's changing today, we hear. Our team have been successful in achieving returns of 0.30%, considerably above our benchmark level of 0.17%. So I'm very pleased to report that because of that, Council is now forecasting a return of 196,000, around 10% more than originally forecast or budgeted for, which is a really great achievement by the team in the current environment. Mr. Mayor, members, thank you. That concludes this report from Cabinet, and I move on the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2 of the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeVille. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Rawson?
Yeah, very happy to second 2122, item 9 on to me the blue order paper. I'd just like to add my congratulations to Councillor DeVille for his continuing great work and the whole of the finance team. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. Questions from members? Yes, we have Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to really prove how difficult the whole thing is, page 355, top of the page says, financial markets are now pricing in a first increase in bank rates from 0.1% to 0.25 in February 2022. But this looks ambitious. Well, it's happened today. So for financial experts, it does make it very hard for everybody else to somehow catch up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Any other member wishing to speak? No. Okay, so we'll move to the vote on it's 2.1. Note the mid-year position on Treasury activity for 2021-22 and approve the mid-year position on the prudential indicators for 2021-22. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, Cabinet recommendations to the Council, building control proposals for a delegated service. Councillor Binlos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, building control is one of the bedrock services that we provide as an authority. It enables us to ensure that the construction of properties is done so in the correct way and the rules around construction are met, providing us all with quality and robust structures that we can be confident meet all the required standards. Our in-house building control comprises of 1.5 full-time employees, and whilst our small team currently provide an excellent service, the concerns around resilience continue doing so need to be addressed. With such a small team, any illness, holidays, or indeed loss of a team member for whatever reason puts an immense strain on the delivery of this service. In addition, recruitment of further building control officers to alleviate this will be difficult as there is a national shortage of building control officers. Currently, along with ourselves, a further 5 other local authorities make up the Leicestershire Building Control Partnership. This is based in Blaby and who also act as the host and provide technical support and backup for the group. The partnership is now forming with the other members a far more holistic approach to building control by providing through Blaby an integrated single delegated service for building control, which will cover all the aspects, but will still allow us to have the continuity of retaining the current staff, although they will be 2P'd across to Blaby. The delegated service will offer us not only the resilience that we need to continue delivering a quality provision, but also the capacity and capability to provide a service that meets the demands required of building control throughout all eventualities. It will also enable us to potentially increase our market share of the business and ultimately, hopefully, our fees. We hope to join this delegated service at the beginning of the financial year 22. Our only other option to this would be to continue with our small in-house service. However, this would ultimately limit our aspirations for the future of our building control and seriously affect our resilience for the future. May I remind everybody that this is a statutory function and as such must be provided. We've been working with 1.5 personnel, and I know when I was here, there was 2.5, I think. But we've been working with 1.5 personnel only because of the support by the partnership. So please bear that in mind. And with that, I'd like to move that we approve 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bindloss. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm more than happy to second this. I think Councillor Bindloss has done an excellent job of explaining why. So yeah, I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Members, any questions for Councillor Bindloss? No, it would appear not. You got away with that one. So now I'd like to move to the vote on this, and so all those in favour of the recommendations at 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, please show now. Yep, that's unanimous again, so that's passed. Thank you. Moving on to item 11, Cabinet recommendations to Council housing strategy. Councillor Bindloss again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Can I start this one actually by apologising, because if you look at Appendix A, you'll notice that in the foreword, I appear to have had a promotion. Actually, I really must apologise about this because I did have this mentioned to me a week or so ago, strangely by the deputy himself, and I completely forgot to speak and get it sorted out. So I must start with an apology on that one, and we'll move on from there. But members, I'm sure that you will all agree with me that this is an excellent piece of work and one that gives us a great insight and an understanding into the needs and requirements set before us to ensure the borough of a successful continuation in its evolution. The housing strategy document underpins the way that we will build houses, along with the infrastructure that supports them for the next 5 years. The priorities that we make in relation to these considerations, all of this will ultimately help to shape Milton for generations to come. Much of the issues highlighted within this report and the way forward in relation to our strategy are well known to us already. However, the credibility of this document lies not in just what we already know, or indeed what the officers may tell us, but from our community and through the consultation with them that has also had an input and ultimately helped to shape this report into the fine document that it is today. The housing strategy document highlights many key areas for us to be aware of, which need addressing. And among these are so importantly highlighted items like the lack of social housing to rent. It highlights that we are below the national average, and this is something that we must address in a proactive way. It all goes on to mention that much of our housing is older and therefore it will cost more to maintain and is effectively less efficient to run. It also mentions that our population is becoming older and all the ramifications that go along with this, which also need considering for the future. So our new housing strategy document must address all of the above and the many other issues related that this report highlights so well. I mentioned earlier infrastructure, and we must make certain that along with housing, that we ensure that we pay heed to this area as the need for substantial quality infrastructure that will cope with the demands of our growing borough was mentioned again and again and again, particularly in the public consultation document. Our report also highlights that to maximise local employment, there is a need for the training and upskilling of trades, which help build and maintain our houses and all that goes with them. To be successful in achieving this, we must network with relevant agencies. As our report suggests, we must be mindful and proactive in our providing of new homes and be flexible enough to react to the needs of the different communities within our borough. But in addition, use similar considerations in the upgrading of our older homes as well, so that they too meet not only the needs of the residents, but that they are also addressing the requirements of the climate and the environment. Our report goes on to highlight the need for housing to be affordable, not only in the direct purchase by using schemes like Help to Buy and the like, but also, and so importantly, in having realistically and affordable private rental. Above all, the above should be quality housing, quality infrastructure. The necessity to provide quality shines through from the consultation report. The conclusion to all of this is shown in the strategic objectives of the report. 1, delivering growth. 2, better homes. 3, supporting people. And 4, sustainable homes. I'd like to thank all the officers for all their hard work in producing this report. It really is a first-class one. And I would like to move that we approve recommendations 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bindlos. Secretary, Councillor Orson.
Yeah, I'm not supposed to be seconding this, as you can see, Councillor Brown was, but unfortunately for Councillor Brown, he failed his lateral test this afternoon. So he's nipped over for a PCR. He got one straight away. And so let's fingers crossed for him and the family. It's going to be negative. But I can inform you that certainly if Roden was here, he'd be very, very pleased to second this. And he would also be thanking the officer. It really is a great report. There's no doubt about that. And also to thank Councillor Bindlos for his in-depth introduction. So very pleased to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Orson. Members, any questions? Okay, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of the report? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12, Cabinet recommendations to the Council, ways of working, project update, way we work strategy 21-20 to 24. Councillor de Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, COVID has made the world a very different place for us all. Practices that we have had to adopt just to keep going during the pandemic have changed our way of life and demonstrated that almost everything can be done differently, often more efficiently, and certainly as effectively, and nowhere is that more apparent than in some parts of the workplace. At Milton Borough Council, staff have embraced the challenges presented by the pandemic and have developed a new hybrid operating model and ways of working based on lessons learned and of necessity from changes in the working practices that were necessary, necessary and vital as a consequence of maintaining services during the pandemic. Members, the new working model outlined in this document, which maximises on the use of remote technology, is expected to improve productivity and work-life balance, whilst ensuring and maintaining the delivery of the high-quality public services that we expect. Excuse me a second, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Members, the proposals contained in this paper have evolved and been developed over the last 18 months through extensive engagement and consultation with workforce groups, the Joint Staff Working Group, and the leadership teams and the trades union, and are in the process of being formalised with this paper. The Way We Work strategy 2021 to 24 outlined in the paper was recently brought to Cabinet where I'm pleased to say it received full support and gained approval. I now bring it to you for approval and move on the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2. 2.1 is that council adopts the way we work, our strategy and accompanying documents as shown at appendices A, B and C. And 2.2, the delegates authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leader of the council to make amendments to the strategy to account for economic, organisational or environmental changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeMille. Seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, very happy to second 2.1.2.2 on the item 12. And also thank Councillor DeMille for all his work into this. Take yourself back 2 years ago. I mean, hybrid working, when you think about it, it was a phrase we didn't really know, wasn't it, really, 2 years ago. Now it's ingrained into us, and certainly we have to stop with it. I know from my own family, my younger boy, he works in the south, and well, he hasn't even been into work for getting on 2 years now. So if you really want to attract the best people, this is the way to go and the only way to go. So very pleased to second.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. Any questions from members? Okay, we'll go to the vote on 2.1 and 2.2. All those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous again. Thank you very much. So moving on to item 13, recommendations and reports from committees, revised members' code of conduct. The monitor officer to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members. The purpose of this report is to present a revised members' code of conduct. The draft code has been through our constitutional review working group, as well as our audit and standards in November, and is now presented to council for approval. Members will be aware that the Localism Act places a duty on the authority to promote and maintain high standards of conduct, and as such we're required to adopt a members' code of conduct. Our last members' code of conduct was adopted in July 2012 and last reviewed by council in 2017. Following that, in 2019, the Committee on Standards in Public Life published a national report on local government ethical standards. One of the main recommendations of that committee was for the Local Government Association to create an updated non-mandatory model code of conduct which local authorities could consider either adopting in full or adapting according to local circumstances. Now the LGA issued that model code in January this year, and it was updated further in May this year, 2021. So throughout the course of this year, I've been meeting with a small group of monitoring officers across Leicestershire to review and determine whether any variations were required to the LGA model code of conduct to reflect any local issues, and also look to create a common code for adoption across all Leicestershire authorities, including our parish councils. Now, the main change, whilst the code will look different, the main changes to the code are detailed in the appendix report that you have before you at paragraph 5.5. A lot of the work that we did recognised that Leicestershire is a two-tier authority, so we wanted to ensure that we had a common code between the county and the district councils, and that was primarily to assist our members that are dual-hatted and avoid the need for them to have to apply two different codes or adhere to two different codes. There is a local addition that has been made to the model code before you at paragraph 3.22 of the appendix on interest, and that provides further clarity for our dual-hatted members. At the same time, we recognise that district councils have the responsibility for conduct-related issues in respect of parish councils, and we were also keen to ensure the model code was fit for purpose for parish councils. We have had a number of discussions with the Chief Executive of LRAP, the Leicestershire and Rutland Association for Local Councils, and they have confirmed their commitment to continue to work with us as a borough and the districts to encourage the adoption of this draft code throughout our parish councils as well, which is very positive. The report at paragraph 5.7 shows the progress across the county in terms of approvals and their commitment to adopting this locally amended code. I think that in recent weeks, or it might be recent days, the County Council have adopted the local amended Code of Conduct before you. So as I say, it was considered by our Constitutional Review Working Group on the 26th of October and subsequently Audit and Standards Committee on the 30th of November, and members of those working groups and committee were fully supportive of presenting the locally amended code to Council for adoption, with it being effective from the 1st of April to enable us to roll out some Code of Conduct training. Mr. Mayor, the recommendation for Council is at 2.1 of the report, which is to approve the locally amended Code of Conduct to be implemented from the 1st of April 2022. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Smith to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move this motion. I believe it's incredibly important that councillors and employees conduct themselves in a way that reflects positively on the council. This revised Code of Conduct takes into account all methods of communication, not just face-to-face, so that includes telephone calls, online meetings, and so forth. It really reinforces and reiterates the importance of respect in the way that you present yourself and also how you treat others. In recent years, social media has been on the rise, so this Code of Conduct sort of presents the guidance in a much clearer way with regards to how we present ourselves on social media and how we interact with others on there. It also sets out in a very clear and very easy to understand way the interests that you disclose and the registrable interests, sorry. So I think it's a fantastic model Code of Conduct, and I really hope it's passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, happy to second it, and nothing to add other than, you know, I've looked through it and been part of the Constitution Review Working Group, and I'm fully supportive of all the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Okay, members, anybody got anything they wish to ask about this one? Councillor de Burgh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This particular area falls under my portfolio, and I just want to compliment Councillor Smith and Councillor Illingworth for bringing this paper to Council and presenting it so well. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor de Burgh. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations at 2-1. Yep, that's unanimous again. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to item 14. Recommendations and reports from committees, provision of external audit services. The Director for Corporate Services to provide a brief introduction.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council needs to appoint an external auditor for the period from 2023-24, when our current arrangement ends. The recommendation from the Audit and Standards Committee is that the Council opts into the Public Sector Audit Appointment Scheme. This is considered to offer the best all-round value for money option, avoiding the need to undertake our own procurement, where we would be competing with the National Procurement Scheme and would be unlikely to attract a good bid. A separate procurement would also take up considerable member and officer time. Subject to approval this evening, I will formally respond to the invitation to join the national scheme by the deadline set out. There's two recommendations, 2.1 and 2.2. 2.1, that we accept the public sector appointments invitation to opt into the sector-led option for the appointment of external auditors to principal local government and police bodies for 5 financial years from the 1st of April 2023. And 2.2, that the Director for Corporate Services be delegated authority to give effect to the appointment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mover for the motion, Councillor Orson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to move 2122 on item 14. I'm not an audit expert, as you well know. I'm not on the audit committee, but it's sort of, if you just look at 3.1, and therefore ask everyone to turn over the page there. By taking part in the collective procurement through PSA, this will reduce the cost to the council of both the procurement and the actual service itself. If the council does not use the national appointment arrangements, the council will need to establish its own auditor panel with an independent chair and independent members to oversee a local audit of procurement and ongoing management of the audit contract. That absolutely swings this report for me, and thank you, Dawn Garden, for that introduction.
Thank you, Councillor Olsen. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, much pleasure in seconding that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, okay, members, any questions on the report? No, so we'll go to the vote to accept the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2. All those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous again. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 15, recommendations, reports from committees, provision of internal audit services. The Director of Corporate Services again, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the council has received its internal audit services for the past 5 years through a delegation agreement with local government shared services, along with a number of former Welland authorities. This has been a high-performing service, providing access to wider specialist services such as fraud and IT audit than would be the case if we employed an in-house team. This delegation agreement comes to an end in March 2022, and also the changes within Northamptonshire has given rise to a change in the employing authority. Audit and Standards Committee are recommending that the service continue to be delegated from April 2022 to Northamptonshire Council, who are the new employer for the audit team. The Council's internal auditor and audit team will remain the same. Other current council members are also intending to continue with the service. Before the service was delegated, previously extensive research was undertaken into alternative options, and this delegation was identified as the best value for money. Little has changed in the internal audit market since this time, and a review of other provision within Leicestershire has confirmed the service continues to perform well and represent value for money. Subject to council approval, work will continue on a refresh of the service level agreement in consultation with the Audit and Standards Committee. There's 4 recommendations in the report. The first, that we delegate the internal audit service to Northamptonshire Council from the 1st of April 2022. Secondly, delegates authority to the Director for Corporate Services in consultation with the Assistant Director for Governance and Democracy to finalise the delegation agreement with Northamptonshire Council. Thirdly, that delegates authority to the Director for Corporate Services to review the agreement every 5 years to ensure best value and to make any in-year changes to the agreement as required to reflect any legislative or organisational changes. And fourthly, to note that the service level agreement is provided to the Audit and Standards Committee for approval before being finalised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the Director for Corporate Services has already said, the Council has access to a very large team that has a variety of skills and knowledge, and it would be a crying shame for us to lose that. The service has been incredibly high performing, and we've had some fantastic levels of service. They represent good value for money. Not passing this would mean that we have to go through that process again and potentially not receive the same level of service. The current internal audit team have a fantastic relationship with officers and members of the Audit and Standards Committee. And yeah, I honestly can't see a reason for us not passing this. I think they've been doing a fantastic job and that we should continue. So I'm happy to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Illingworth.
Yes, again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great pleasure in seconding this. It's all been said, and my only real comment is if it ain't bust, don't fix it.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions of the report? Councillor DeMille.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a question as such. I just want to thank Councillor Smith and Illingworth for bringing this paper so well to council. It's clear that I fully support it. it's very clear that the service which is ending has for 5 years performed very well for the council and provided good level of value for money, as has already been said. And so I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeBell. Any other members? No, so we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendations, please shout. Yeah, that's unanimous as well. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to item 16, political balance and allocation of seats to political groups. Members, you will note that you have a supplementary agenda pack with the pages 347 to 350. These will replace pages 267, 268 and 269. Could I ask the monitor officer to provide a brief introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks Council's approval of the political balance calculations and allocation of seats on committees. It also seeks approval for Council to elect chairman and vice chairs for the various committees. Members will be aware that recent changes in the group and committee membership and the recent by-election mentioned earlier by the leader in November requires the political balance to be revisited to ensure the council complies with its statutory obligations under the Local Government and Housing Act. The changes are set out in paragraph 4.1 of your report. We have a duty as a council to determine the allocation of seats to be filled by appointments, except for cabinet and licensing, to ensure that there is proportionality across all formal activities of the council representing the overall political composition. It affects all formally constituted panels, committees and subcommittees which discharge functions on behalf of the authority. Members will note from paragraph 5.3 of your report that the political balance actually remains unchanged. We were also notified that the Conservative group wished to make some changes to the committee allocations with effect from the 23rd of October this year. Now, nominations have been received from the Conservative group, and those have been circulated to members prior to this meeting. The changes to the committee membership left the positions of Chair of Scrutiny, Planning and Audit and Standards vacant. However, in the interim period, chairs were appointed at the relevant meetings to enable business to continue. And the report details that Councillor Posnet and Councillor Childs took on the responsibilities of the Chair of Planning and Scrutiny respectively in that interim period until formal appointments could be made by Council. Councillor Wilkinson had also taken on the responsibility of Vice Chair of Scrutiny, so members are also being asked to approve the backdating of special responsibility payments in recognition of the work that those members have done in the interim period to enable business to continue. Now, the nominations for chairs and vice chairs have also been received from the Conservative group, and those have been circulated prior to the meeting. The opposition group has also put forward an alternate nomination for the vice chair of scrutiny. Now, at this stage, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to hand back to you to invite nominations. Once you've received those nominations, Mr. Mayor, you may wish to take the recommendations en bloc. If you get more than one nomination, then the Deputy Monitoring Officer is present in the chamber and will be able to provide any support in terms of the voting that might be necessary. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so with bearing in mind what's just been said, I'd like to invite nominations from the floor for Vice Chair of Scrutiny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely delighted to propose Councillor Jacob Wilkinson for that role.
Thank you. Seconding, yes, Councillor Graham. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Okay, so there are no further nominations for that. So I do intend to take all the nominations en bloc for all the positions. So now I'll ask Councillor Lawson to move the motion.
Yeah, move the recommendations. I haven't got a lot to add to what Kieran's introduced. There's obviously an opportunity to come along to reshuffle. It's made a stronger back. We want to deliver for Milton. Obviously, the road is absolutely key to that. that is virtually there. Can't quite say it's 100% there, but we are nearly there, and I genuinely believe it will happen. But we've reshuffled, we've got a stronger back, and we will continue to deliver on our priorities. So happy to move 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, including the Vice Chair scrutiny, and 2.4.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have pleasure in seconding all those motions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just an arithmetical one on political balance calculation. Am I right in understanding that, say, for instance, an eight Conservative member committee where the calculation gave 8.5 or more would be rounded up to 9, and similarly, if it gave 8.5 or less, it would stay at 8. So midway between the two numbers, the 0.5 is the critical point. So on the employment committee, we have 5.65, and it's rounded down to 5, and the opposition have 1.34, and it's rounded up to 2. And that just seems to me that 1.34 is less than 1.5, so that should go down to 1, and 5.65 is more than 5.5, so it should go up to 6.
Very interesting, Councillor Illingworth. Could the monitoring officer please give some guidance on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what Councillor Illingworth has said is correct, that where it reaches a 0.5 decimal, we would ordinarily round up. However, the number of seats that have been allocated are 30 seats to the Conservative group and 8 seats to the opposition. And in some circumstances, you will find where there is a decimal that would be rounded up in 2 occasions, but actually there is only a certain number of seats that are available to each of the parties. And in those situations, we have to agree with the group leaders which party will either give up a seat or take a seat on those committees. So it's probably that would be the result of when that sort of instance would occur. Does that assist, Councillor Illingworth? I can't see you, so it's quite difficult.
Yes, it does. And whilst listening to that, I took the time to look at the table above it and understand that that's the overriding thing, is that the first calculation sets the numbers for the groups. The secondary calculations have to have an element of adjustment. I should have looked a little more thoroughly before I asked. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No. Okay, so we'll move to the vote. So all those in favour of the nominations, please show. Yep, that's a unanimous again. Thank you very much. Moving on. Where are we now? Item 17, appointments to outside bodies and working groups. Assistant Director for Governance and Democracy to provide a brief introduction.
That's me again, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. A very short introduction for me on this one. This report seeks to present the proposed nominations for representatives on outside bodies and working groups for the remainder of the year 2021-22. Members are asked to appoint representatives to the remaining outside bodies for the remainder of the municipal year. Now, at the council meeting in May 2020, the council approved the appointments indicated in column A of Appendix A would actually be allocated in accordance with the relevant role, ward member or portfolio holder. And council agreed that the holders of those roles specified would automatically be appointed to the outside body, and council would simply be asked to note those appointments in future years. We are now requesting that council note the changes to the appointments in Appendix A, column A, but also appoint representatives to serve on the outside bodies and working groups as listed in Appendix A, and those are columns B, C, and the working groups of your appendix. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the Assistant Director for Governance for what she describes as a short introduction. I could say I'm going to have an even shorter. I'm just going to propose 2122.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Graham.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have pleasure in seconding those, although I'm afraid I'm on quite a lot of them. But I would like to pay tribute to Councillor Pat Cumbers for work she's done for the furniture project over the years. And I'm very grateful she has said she'll advise me on what to do in the coming future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Members, any questions? No questions. Okay, so we'll move to the vote on 2.1 and 2.2. All those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, item 18, annual equalities report. Councillor Posnet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've much pleasure in presenting this to the group or to full council. It's an excellent report. Equalities is required by legislation, but this is also the right thing to do. We don't have to depend on legislation for us to accept that this is the right thing for us to do. We have to comply with the Equalities Act. The report has provided us with an update on the progress that has been made. It is easy to read and explains in detail what responsibilities we have. It is looking at not just our councils and members' obligations, but is looking at the impact that they can have on residents. We are also working with partners. The Equality Impact Assessment, which is that series of little boxes that you see following your reports, are a good way of checking that when a report is written, that we can see that we have considered the risk to the organisation and logged it as where the risk lies with what we are deciding we want to do. It should also be remembered that equalities is everybody's responsibility. It's not an officer responsibility, it's a member responsibility, but also members in the public. It is also their responsibility to remember people's equalities. I also believe that annual training for members should be mandatory. I know a lot of members don't think it's important, but having been an equality member at county for quite a while, I can assure you that it is very important and that there are sometimes subtle changes that come up every year that can put a different slant on equalities. So I'm a great favour of equalities training being mandatory for all members. I'd like to thank Councillor Freer-Jones, who cannot be here tonight, for working on this report with Aisha Rahman, the officer. I don't know if there are any questions, but if I can't answer them, I will speak to Aisha on Monday and get a reply for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Posnet. I note that Councillor Steadman was going to second this, but she's not with us tonight. So do we have a seconder? Okay, could I ask Rebecca?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have great pleasure in seconding this. I think Councillor Posnet has said absolutely everything I could wish to say and more. Equality is something that is very close to my heart. As many of you know, I work in SEN education, and to see equality not just in person, but also equality of opportunity being brought to the fore of everything is just, it's wonderful to see. And I agree that we have a lot of work to do. And I agree that we need mandatory yearly training on it, because as Councillor Posnet said, things change all the time, and it is our responsibility to keep up, and it's our responsibility to make sure that whilst we do exercise our right to freedom of expression, that should not infringe upon other people's own emotional and mental well-being. So I am so happy to second this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any questions from members? No, so we'll go straight to the vote then on recommendation at 2.1. All those in favour? Yeah, that's Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Right, 19, revised member officer protocol. Councillor de Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, the current member officer protocol published in the Milton Borough Council Constitution has not been reviewed for many years. Members will appreciate that, as with all documents of this nature, as time progresses, it's vital that they're dusted off, revisited and refreshed to maintain their effective position in the changing world. To that end, members, this document was recently reviewed by the members of the Constitution Review Working Group. And after looking carefully at the old documents and what it contained, members made proposals for some minor amendments to bring it up to date and maintain its viability. And those changes have been incorporated in the document at Appendix A in your papers. As with all changes of this nature, it's a constitutional requirement that the proposal be brought to council for approval. Against that background, Mr. Mayor, I move the proposal at 2.1 that council approves the revised member officer protocol at Appendix A of the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor de Boyle. Councillor Rawson.
Very pleased to second, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. Any comments from or questions from members? No questions or comments. Okay, so we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour of the motion at 2.1. Yep, that's unanimous again. Thank you very much. Right, now we come to item 20 on the agenda, the Local Government Boundary Committee for England Electoral Review notification. Chief Executive.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I will now briefly introduce the report. The purpose of this report, members, is to notify the Council that the Local Government Boundary Commission for England has advised us of their intention to undertake an electoral review of Milton Borough Council. The purpose of an electoral review is to consider the number of councillors elected to the Council and the name and makeup of wards. Legislation requires that the Commission undertake an electoral review of every principal authority from time to time is the quoted period. The last electoral review of Milton Borough Council was undertaken in 2002, and accordingly the Commission now considers that review of this authority should take place in time to be implemented the election in 2027. The Boundary Commission is inviting the Council to provide its comments on when the review should start by the 21st of January 2022. The preferred timescale, which would form the basis of our response, is set out in the appendix and would see the review start at the end of 2024 and conclude in the autumn of 2026, the details of which are set out in the report. Crucially, should this be accepted by the Commission, the electoral review would have no bearing on the 2023 election. The report therefore asks members to note the Boundary Commission's intention to hold an electoral review and seek support for the preferred timescale, which would then form the basis of my response to them by the 21st of January next year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to just 1 moment. Yeah, 212223. Happy to propose those. It's quite interesting because Councillor Posnet and myself have both been involved in an electoral review, although at the County Council. And last, as Chief Executive's already said, the last one for the Milton Borough Council was 2002 for the election in 2003. So that has stood its ground by the time the election comes around for the new boundaries, 24 years, which is a long time, isn't it, when you think about it? And again, as Councillor Posnet will support me on this, it's quite interesting how they handle it. They was not actually probably start off by asking us how many councillors we want. It could be an increase, it could be a decrease, it could stop as it is. Who knows what's going to happen? And it's obviously you've got the timetable in front of you. But the basic theory is to get the same number of people to each council representing the people. So for county council terms, they use 10,000 up or down 10%. The borough, I honestly don't know what they'll be working, but obviously the borough is growing quick at this moment in time. They go by planning permissions that are permitted, not that are being talked about, ones that have actually been permitted. So with all the significant housing growth we're going to have in the town of 4,000 houses, I suspect by then most of the permissions will be through. It is almost certainly going to have quite a dramatic impact onto the town wards. They will also be looking at, do you want multi-ward, multi-member wards? It could come down to single-member wards. That happened in northwest Leicestershire when they had their district council review. And in the country wards, of course, the villages are growing quick. Old Alby, my own village, has had quite a number of houses. Waltham's going down the same road. Long Clawson will have a fair few. So it's going to alter the dynamics of the wards. I remember in 2002, they wanted to put the Old Alby ward in conjunction with Waltham ward, which made no sense to me whatsoever. But that would have been a 2-member ward. But obviously I wasn't on the council to decide that. But that was taken out by the Electoral Commission. It's going to be an interesting journey. I have no idea how it's going to finish, like no one. But as you can see, it's slow, but it is very, very sure. And I encourage all members to take their part and do their bit. So very happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Orson. Councillor Graham?
I'm very happy to second with proviso, but it won't really affect me either way. But I have much pleasure in seconding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Members, any questions? Councillor Illingworth.
Mayor, just one. Which committee, if any, of gets the chance to have some input into this, or it be run by, or what? Because it doesn't fall quite within the remits of any. Is it a scrutiny item, or what? Perhaps the chief exec looks as though he can answer with that.
Chief exec.
I can see the monitoring officer is come on screen, so she may well want to comment. I suspect we haven't formally determined the right approach yet, given it's too early. At this stage, it's very much just about the timescales, and then we need to map out, once we're confirmed what the timescales are, what the approach would be. But perhaps it might be helpful for the monitoring officer to comment.
I think it's a really good question, Councillor Illingworth, but not one for this meeting. You've jumped the gun. So what initially will happen is the council will respond today with a proposed timetable, and once that proposed timetable has been confirmed by the Boundary Commission, we'll then move to our next steps, and our next steps will be exactly that. We will come back to council to advise what the Boundary Commission have come back with, and it's at that point that we will consider how members wish to be involved in this, because it doesn't sit within the remit of any of the committees that we've got currently. One of the options that we have, and that I've put some thought to, is creating a Boundary Commission working group, so that members can sit on that working group, similar to the constitutional review working group that we have, and then any changes that are proposed and work that needs to be done in readiness for the review and for the submission that we will have to make to the Boundary Commission will be put before those members before we take any further action or respond to the Boundary Commission. I hope that answers your question.
So, okay.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Yes, to me, it sounds like working group or a task and finish group, as and when appropriate, is the way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Posnet?
On page 336 under options considered, it says none. The council is required to submit a response by the 21st of January 2021. So have we already responded to something, or is that a misprint?
Councillor Posnet, that's my fault. That should read 21st of January 2022. Well spotted. Apologies.
Thank you.
Just wanted to prove I'd read it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wilkinson, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been involved in a process like this before for my sins when I was involved with the City of Leicester Conservatives. It's an interesting process that you have to go through. You don't always get what you want, but the Commission worked through it very well. It's good to see we've got a good, decent run up to it. when I was involved in that process, it was very short, snappy. We need to get it over by the next election. And I know that's the case in other authorities like Charnwood at the moment are going through the same process, and it's less than 18 months now to the next election. So it's good that we've got a good run up, and I'm happy to endorse the timetable that's been proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Any other members? Councillor Rawson.
My memory of the 2002 first election of 2003 review was it increased the membership by 2, actually. Dorian went from a 2-member ward to a 3-member ward, and Councillor Wilkinson's own ward of Siseby also went from 2 to 3. So, like I say, who knows what's going to happen, but it is interesting. Some people are going to be happy and some people aren't going to be quite so happy, but that's how it goes.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Okay, we'll go to the vote on the recommendations at 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. All those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous again. Thank you very much. That's the last item on the agenda.
Before you finish, Mr. Mayor, can I just say something?
Oh, yes, certainly, Councillor Wilson.
And then I'd just like to thank the officers and all the staff of Milton Borough Council for preparing this room tonight. There's a huge amount of work gone on to this. The governance, Assistant Director for Governance has obviously been working really hard, giving her advice. I feel 100% as safe as I can be in a pandemic situation. I went to Tesco's this morning. I can tell you what, I feel a lot safer in here than what I did in Tesco's in Milton at about 11 o'clock this morning. My only complaint is I'm absolutely frozen and I can't wait to get in the car. But thank you very much to all the staff and officers of Milton Borough Council for making us feel so safe.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. We won't be processing out of the chamber tonight, so I'd just like to finish by wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and see you all in 2022. Thank you. That went all right, didn't it?